in our profession. Your name, sir, is?
Alan Ainsworth.
Alan. 51 years in our profession. That deserves a round of applause for Alan. 51 years, well done, brilliant.
A man accountant has once been involved in IT Yorkshire, so in my profession I'm 40 years.
40 years, only 11 to go then.
I know. I don't think I'll make that long.
Well, I joined in 1977. I joined the old Department of Health and Social Security, and that was in the days of. Can I operate this, or am I best asking you?
Oh, it's a video.
Right, I was going to watch, make sure I don't make a mistake. I started in the days of punch cards. Anyone remember punch cards?
Yeah, definitely.
And this being the day of the American election, it was the American election of 2000 that brought all this back to me. I haven't used punch cards for ages, but I reckon if you put
the chads.
Hanging
chads.
I didn't know they were called chads, did you?
No.
But as young programmers, we used to punch the code hard.
Yeah.
And they used to say to us, if you make a mistake, you have to punch a new card, don't try and repair the old one.
Yeah.
We were young and lazy, so what we would do, we would get what I now know is the chat, and we would put the card with the wrong hole on top of the chat. You get the back of the biro and rub it, and the chat would go in the hole and appear to stick there. We thought, that's good, that saves us from trapping another card out. We would then, there was no terminals in those days, we'd then walk across, hand this pack of cards to the operator, who would ripple through them like a Las Vegas card shark. And all these things that I now know are chads would leap out and fall on the floor, and you think to yourself, well, that's not going to work. Sure enough, it never did.
No.
So it was that American election that brought it all back to me. But I started in the old Department of Health and Social Security. I worked for a couple of times in the 80s at something called the Central Computer and Telecommunications Agency, which is no more. I joined Ag and Fish, which is no more. I've realised that as you get older, you have to explain to young people that all the organisations you worked with in the first half of your career change their names because they don't exist anymore. But I worked my way around the civil service, ended up running the IT for the Departments of Environment and Transport about 15 years ago, had a spell in Northern Ireland, came back via the Treasury, the Cabinet Office, the NHS and HMRC, and then came all the way back to where I started in what's now called the Department for Work and Pensions. And that's my day job. Sorry, DWP?
DWP, yeah.
I figured I'd spend a few years with HMRC taking money from the public. I'd spend a few more years towards the end of my career giving some of it back. So I'm in DWP now, where I'm the director of a program which is actually insourcing a lot of IT, which about 20 years ago was outsourced to the private sector. So that's another thing from having been in the career long enough. You see things going full cycle. What we decided was better done in the private sector many years ago is now coming back in. And is being done in the public sector. So that's my day job. As I say, was elected as president last year and have been enjoying it. One of the reasons I always wanted to volunteer for BCS whenever I had a chance was that early on I've always credited BCS with giving me my education in IT. I did all the BCS Part 1 and Part 2 exams as a young computer programmer analyst in the early 80s. Anyone do the Part 1 and Part 2 exams? They were hard work, and so that was really, they gave me my IT education. I didn't go to university and study computer science like perhaps some of you did. Here's a quote that we put on our website a while ago from one of our students. She said, "I consider winning one of the most prestigious awards from BCS a milestone in my academic career. So I highly recommend BCS for those who wish to acquire professional IT knowledge and experience." Well, I do too. I'm sure you do as well, and that's one of the reasons I always volunteered for BCS whenever I had an opportunity to do so. So I started off on what we used to call the Technology Awards. Many years ago, we do it differently now. Many years ago, we used to have a panel under somebody called Graham Brooks, who some of you might remember, who is the professor of computing at Hull University. And an old friend of mine called Errol Thomas got me involved in this. And we used to go out, and when people applied for one of our awards, we would go out and visit them and interview them and kick the tyres on what it was they were proposing, and then come back and give a report. We do it a bit differently now. What happens now is once a year we get together. For years it's been at Reading Football Club. For some reason this year it was at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club in the executive streets. And it's a bit like X Factor, but without the buzzers. People come in and they have about 10 or 15 minutes to do their pitch. Then you get to ask the questions, and then at the end you make a recommendation. And if you haven't got involved with that, and you wanted to volunteer, it's a really fun day out. You get to meet all sorts of interesting people. an education in itself from that day, so I really recommend that.
And they would get CPE hours for doing that, would they?
I'm not sure, you might well do. You probably should.
And that's a selling point,
because it is an education, as I say, yeah. So what I've always enjoyed about my career is the way that it all changes. I always jokingly say I could never be an accountant because 2 and 2 always equals 4. And the numbers never change. I'm sure accountants can do that. But what I've always loved is the fact that it all changes, so no more punch cards, loads of other things. Here's a quote I found recently. It's from a video on YouTube. The reference is there if you want to look it up. It's called Did You Know? And it said this, it said, we are currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist, using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. Then it said, the amount of new technical information is doubling every 2 years. For students starting a 4-year technical degree, that means that half of what they learn will be outdated by their 3rd year of study. And that's what I've always loved about my career in IT. I call them the wow moments. When you see something for the first time, you go wow, because you've never seen it before, and you can immediately see what the potential is. So for instance, I remember the first time I ever saw a spreadsheet. I was on a training course in an RAF base in Bedfordshire in the early 80s, and someone showed me this thing, and they started to type the numbers in, and you could see the rows starting to add up, the columns starting to add up, and I just thought, wow, because you could immediately see that some things you couldn't do before with a computer you can now do.
Was that Lotus 1, 2, 3 or something?
Probably
No,
was Lotus.
Supercal.
Supercal.
Or Lotus 1, 2, 3.
No, probably Supercal.
VisiCalc?
Physical.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one was
Supercal, Physical, or
Supercal
Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But they say that the spreadsheet was the biggest productivity move in computing,
Yeah, I can believe that.
in terms of pure productivity.
The guy who invented Supercal gave it away for free.
Yeah.
The same as the guy who invented the web gave it away for free.
Yeah. Well, the web was the next one, of course. I remember seeing the web for the first time in the early 90s in America, and someone just pulled up a page, and none of us could have told then how it was going to change our lives. But even so, you looked at the web and you thought, wow, all this information suddenly available. My latest wow was actually Liz Bacon, our president from a couple of years ago, told me about smart dust. Do you know about smart dust?
No.
If you Google it, you'll find out about smart dust. It's tiny little electromechanical components with a sensor in them. Each of them is the size of a grain of dust. What you can do apparently, I don't recommend this, so don't try this at home. What you can do is you can take a handful of it and you can throw it on someone's jacket or put it in their drink, and you can immediately track them wherever they go because they've got this dust on that road. I was brought up on James Bond films and I love John McCarthy. You can imagine how excited I got when I heard about smart dust. But again, you just think, wow, because it's a sign of how the technology moves on and how our profession moves on, and that's what I've always loved about my career in IT. So there's a little bit of audience participation built in here, if that's okay. I can talk for, I've got a hard stop at 8 o'clock, unfortunately, by some ruinously bad planning. I have to be on the 9 o'clock train to Newcastle, which gets in at 12:40 in time to go somewhere at 7:30 the following morning. So apologies, I'm going to have to leave and I won't be able to stay for a drink afterwards. But rather than me talk for 40 minutes, if it's okay with you, I wanted some feedback from you. And here's the first pause. I'm just interested to know, why did you join the BCS? How has it helped you during your career? And whether there's any sort of volunteering role that you might want to consider in the future. Can we just take 2 or 3 minutes, just talk to your partner in 2s and 3s, and then let's have 2 or 3 examples. Is that okay?
I joined the BCS because it was the cheapest CPD I could find.
Cheapest CPD?
My institute required CPD.
Yeah?
I didn't join the BCS, I joined IRMA, but it was
No,
called
CSG.
Auditing by Computers Specialist
Yeah.
Group, which was affiliated to the BCS.
Okay.
So I came in through that group.
Yeah, I came in CSG, Computer Order Specialist Group.
Yeah?
It was 25 quid.
Yeah?
It was, as I said, it was the
Bargain.
cheapest CPD they could find.
Yeah? What about anyone else? Why did you join and how's it helped you, Alan?
I joined the BCS in 1965 because my boss, who just recruited me to be a trainee programmer at British Motor Corporation, insisted that I did. And within 4 weeks I got co-opted onto the Birmingham branch of the British Computer Society, which wasn't a very big branch, but there weren't very many members in 1965.
Yeah. Never look back.
never looked back. Now I'm a fellow, and I've always maintained my membership. It just feels an important component for me. Although I have to say that what disappoints me is that in industry there does not seem to be a widespread acceptance of the professionalism that I think the society ought to be promoting stronger than we do.
It's a good point. That's a subject for another presentation, I think.
Sure.
What we might do about that. Anyone want to say a few words about Harris Hellman?
Well, I'll chip in. I mean, I'll start with the first question. I joined because one of my tutors at UCL wrote me and I didn't know anything about BCS and suggested, this was back in 1981 probably, suggested I join as a student member, which I did. I have to say that I to some extent followed the pattern talked about before of falling by the wayside, but fortunately I didn't actually drop out as a member completely, having sort of reached the point where I couldn't continue as a student member. I don't know whether it still happens now, but in those days I was kind of downgraded to an affiliate because I don't know, does that still happen?
Well,
I mean, it kept me in touch with the BCS.
they don't get downgraded as such, Bob. They have the option of becoming a member of the BCS at an appropriate grade, which may be affiliate,
Okay.
etc.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the option is still open. Anyway, yes, it took me ages to get round to actually becoming a proper member. I mean, but it was that whole thing of going out into industry and sort of getting embedded in that and not really having much time for doing the membership forms. But eventually, I got to the point of wanting to do some research of my own, and which is what I've been doing in recent years, working on my own. And in recent years, how it's helped me is that the BCS has been a great place to come and keep in touch with what's being talked about, and make sure that when I'm working on my own, that I'm not losing touch. And I think actually that's the same for a lot of people who end up specialising in something, even if they're not working on their own. If they're specialising in one area, it's a great way of keeping in touch with different areas, so you don't lose touch completely.
It also helps you to, especially the IRMA group, because we tend to touch on things that are emerging. So like this year was the Bitcoin, what's happening on safe harbors, etc. So there's a good mixture between the legal aspects, where you need the controls aspects, and the future vision. So we've had things like the Internet of Things, and from two very, very different perspectives. And these kind of things help you to, in a lot of cases, you actually know the stuff, but it actually helps you to know that you know the stuff.
Absolutely.
If that makes any sense.
It does.
Well, I speak to IT support teams in the units I've worked in, and they do a good job, a lot of them, but they haven't got a clue about some of the other things.
No.
They're just I find IT techies are just in one little area, like databases or support or doing programming, and they don't know anything about it, not even interested, just a little bit.
That's helpful, thank you. We won't put anyone on the spot then with question 3, but if you are interested in more volunteering roles, do come and have a chat sometime, because there are always opportunities to
I think we've just run out of it.
BCS. Some of you just done this, we saw earlier this evening, which is good, thank you, well done. A quick word about, so that's BCS looking back. Where we are at the moment, I won't read all this because you know all this, but there's a few words there about our mission and what we do to achieve it. Some interesting statistics there and some impressive ones. So this slide is a few months old now, but 70,000 business analysts certified worldwide by BCS. Over 500 organisations partnered with us. Over 2.5 million people have taken the EDCL, the driving licence in the UK since 1997. So those are really impressive figures, aren't they? And those are things that we've achieved as an organisation as a whole. As we hold our breath, this is the bit that causes all the trouble. Yeah, but I'm hoping that if you press this button, there's a little video to give you an update as well. When you're ready.
The answer is no.
It's all going so
What's
well.
V13 HD? Well, it's not the V13
You might have it now.
Another glass of wine while we're just getting up.
Before we get you up to date.
That's the bottles, man.
Don't worry, Luke, if it's not working, we'll send the link round and people will go. Right, bear with us. We'll send you the link afterwards. I'll send it to John and we can send it round and you can hopefully enjoy that. It's a fairly new one that I don't think has been made available publicly yet, but no doubt we'll do soon on YouTube. You'll be able to see what some people are saying about the BCS. You'll know about the three pillars that we talk about that underpin the strapline that John mentioned earlier, making IT good for society. So community, excellence and leadership. And again, I won't read all the words on this slide, but there's a little bit there about what we're doing with all of those three pillars. So on community, it talks there about the need to galvanise and purpose the communities, notice both inside and outside BCS, and actually inside and outside of our profession too, to help us to create a wider impact. On excellence, clearly we hope we do a lot about driving up excellence in our sector in the way that we've been talking about, offering professional people the means to succeed through things like our formal education and training programs, but also events like this that we put on. And leadership, using what we know to lead the sector, tackling the thorny issues that worry society. And in connection with those thorny issues, you'll be aware that we've actually picked four that we particularly want to focus on. That's not to say that we're not interested in other things as well, of course, but these are the four challenges that we're particularly focusing on at the moment. And if you saw the last edition of IT Now, the one with the black cover, it had the little bit that wrapped around the main part of the magazine, and if you've not read it, there's some really good articles in there about each of these four challenges, showing why we picked those and what we're thinking about those. So capability, obviously, in terms of making our profession more capable in terms of supporting and leading in IT. Education, it talks about all the good work that we're doing on education, where of course we've particularly excelled in recent years in schools, lobbying the government to include coding rather than just teaching people how to use PowerPoint, actually teaching people how to code in schools and getting that on the curriculum, and in fact writing a large chunk of the curriculum which supports that. And we hope that will be helpful to people, not just those who might want to go on and become professional coders, but even those who don't, teaching them computational thinking, how to unpack a problem and see various aspects of it. So what we hope we know will be important to people in all walks of life. Health and care, we've had an interest in that for years. Obviously, we've got groups that focus on that in particular. But despite some of the issues in health and IT in recent years, there are still lots of exciting things that we can do in the health and care space to really change the model. For example, we look forward to a time when you're feeling unwell, you won't phone your doctor to report that you're feeling unwell. The doctor will phone you probably before you even start to feel unwell, because the doctor's been told by somebody you wear around your wrist or something that your blood pressure's up or your heart's doing something funny. You might get a surprising call from the doctor saying you don't know it yet, but you're unwell, you need to come in and have a conversation about this and see what we can do for you. So completely changing the paradigm of how we
There's also a healthcare specialist group as well,
that's right.
which is a lot different from the other groups in that the bottom line is the cash. It's people, which is very interesting.
And personal data, obviously educating people as to the helpful aspects of sharing your personal data, but also the dangers sometimes of sharing your personal data. So we all experience both sides of that, don't we? You know, if I get an unsolicited email and it's interesting to me and it tells me something that's an offer I didn't know about, I'm pleased about that. If it's something that's not interesting to me, I'm irritated by it. So again, there, the model that IT Now talks about, that edition I referred to, talks about giving people ownership of their personal data. So we might get to a position where I will give different people permission to access different parts of my personal data. There might be some elements of it I'm prepared to share with the government, some elements I'm prepared to share with my doctor, some elements I'm prepared to share with my employer, and they might be different. And the thought there is that we can move to a position where people have control over what they do with individual elements of their personal data. So those are the challenges, and what we've been doing over the last year is delivering a series of events to debate those sorts of critical issues, and rolling out those debates across branches and specialist groups. And it may be, if the video works, I've got one to show you in a minute or two, or just a little basic of how it works. It may be that it's something you might want to consider for your group, perhaps just using the building blocks that BCS has published and how to hold these sorts of events and debate these sorts of issues. So let's see how it goes. See, this is one that took place early in the year in Leeds.
This is actually the new frontier of human rights debate in our country and in the world.
Welcome to Leeds, to Lambert's Yard, where we're here for the fourth in the series of IT impact events from the BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. And the theme of tonight's discussion is information without borders.
Tonight we're putting together the importance of rights and treating people in a civilised way around data, and some real ideas about what's broken and how we can fix it.
Hello Periscopers, we're live streaming this at BCS Live. Data breaches are no longer trade press news, this is front page 9 o'clock news.
IT professionals should be taking ethics more seriously. What we're actually obsessed with isn't the device, what we're obsessed with is what the device gives us access to.
The power and the perils of information when it's mismanaged is so important.
Do we have somebody who'd like to see where their phone's data is going, who'd like to get inside the secret life of their phone?
Yeah.
Brilliant, we passed the first hurdle. Okay.
First up, we have Channel 4 technology journalist Jeff White, who will be performing a live data hack.
How many packets of information do we think Adam got through in the period of time? And for Adam, we've got 30,306. Round of applause for Adam, very well done. One of the things as a journalist you don't get to do often enough is speak to people who are at the coalface. You get to know what's really happening on the ground, but that's about it.
Former Director of Liberty, Sharmi Chakrabarti, CBE, is here talking about what information without borders means for society.
This debate has to be a multidisciplinary debate. The law and the politics and the ethics and the philosophy needs to catch up the cool technology. If code is the new Latin, you have to choose what kind of cleric you're going to be. And I hope that you're going to be the professionals that empower the people.
Finally, Alan Mitchell, author and strategy director, is talking about the transfer of power from organisations, from businesses to individuals.
Monopolisation with Facebook and Google and so on. Are we seeing concentrations of economic power?
These complicated things, people come at it from so many different angles. We've got a powerful bunch of people in the room tonight.
If anybody's in a position to make a change, it's these people.
A good blend of contrarian views from the speakers. It's really driven the debate and it's translated into messages that we can take into the workplace.
I think the students brought a fresh perspective and a different outlook on some of the issues that we were talking about tonight.
It's just about getting more people into the discussion. Why let the few speak for the many?
When people are downloading apps and accepting terms and conditions, they don't know what they're accepting. When we come to these events like this, it makes the whole picture a lot easier to understand.
People were really engaged, and it felt like there was a bit of a community. I thought it was just fantastic.
Were the attendees BCS members?
I don't think they had to be. So the number, you might have recognised a number of faces
No,
there. Certainly many of them were. So I don't think it was limited. Just as any special interest group for a while to invite non-members along to its event. So I don't know what the proportion was, but it was obviously a successful event. There's another one in Manchester recently. And if you wanted to hold one, just say for your own group, you could get a pack from BCS headquarters which would explain how you might organise an evening like that and get a debate going about one of those issues. And,
what were credentials of Shami Chakrabarti to talk about IT and privacy?
Well, she's obviously got an interest in privacy, given her role in Liberty and in personal data. It's something that she does, and that her organisation does.
Well, I would challenge that, because I'm a council member myself, and I can confirm that she's never done anything about this. She's actually objected to a submission which I suggested on the Forensic Science Service. She said, no, that's not relevant. She objected to an intervention on the ONS, and so on and so forth. So she actually has an obsession with helping terror suspects and similar subjects, to the exclusion of the good for society aspects, those issues which affect all people.
Right.
So I would actually think that she was a very poor choice for discussing those issues which actually affect the whole society.
Well, as the lady said, she's high profile, she has a point of view, not everyone will agree with her point of view.
Well, she doesn't, what I'm saying is that she doesn't have a point of view on the specific issues of IT and privacy. She just has emotive arguments.
Okay. All right, can we go on to, do I need to press something to go on to the next slide?
Sure.
Nothing's happening, so let's see. Oh, we're about to see the
No,
video.
go back. No, back.
Okay. So in terms of education, we mentioned computer science before in schools, barefoot computing. You can Google that and find out about that on our website. So we're not just interested in helping pupils in schools, we're interested in helping teachers. Sometimes teachers feel a little bit shy about teaching IT because it's not something they know about. Sometimes they think the children might know more than they do. So we support those as well. IT obviously how to use technology purposefully and digital literacy. Those are all things that we're interested in terms of the educational work that we do. So let's see if this one works to do with education.
We have been so enthused and so uplifted by the ECDL course that we then said, forget this is not an option. We are going to make it a core subject. We value it that much as a set of skills.
I studied ECDL for about a year overall, and I've done all my grading and finished it, and I got a distinction star overall, so it's good.
I think ECDL helps us in doing projects and presentations for other subjects. It also helps us in our coursework and for college and university, so basically throughout our life.
I'm a final year student where I need to do my project, my presentations and all that. ECDL has been a very great help.
You're engaged in a really fundamental question. What do we want our talent of tomorrow to look like? And how are we going to arm that talent with the skills that we need to perform well in our industry sector?
The BCS is just essential to tech apprenticeship, so it's just great to be here.
It's because of an apprenticeship I've been able to create this company. The work that each and every single one of you have done and made that investment in your career and all your hard work, all those late nights and coffee, is what's led to me being able to start this company and what I believe is making an impact in the future.
A lot of people are now very worried about getting their online skills up to date. So we do a lot of work with people, helping them to learn how to navigate around the internet, how to fill in forms using the internet, which is a big challenge for people who've never done it before.
I think that getting a better grasp of IT and being more IT literate has really helped a lot of our young people to turn their lives around. We've got young people who then have actually discovered that they have a real interest in IT, a real love of it, and that's given them a direction for where they want to go career-wise, which is really exciting.
The audit service is such a need, and I'm hoping that one day I'll work with Google or Apple.
Events like today, all here together, families, mums, dads, kids, it's amazing because it gets the message over to everybody that computing is a great career and that coding is fun and that you can produce your own app in an hour. It's so cool.
Sophia Plus will help us attract the best talent possible. One, through giving us an understanding of what it is that we need, and two, by encouraging and enticing people to come and work for our organisation by providing a very transparent and open career framework.
The BCS model is the first UK network, online network for women computing.
It's a huge benefit to get people of the same like-minded nature into the same room from different companies to share their ideas and their knowledge. It not only benefits an individual level, but it also benefits the organisation.
I would say that any BCS member coming to events like this ends up paying for your membership time and time again. So please come to events like this, come to your branch events, and it will really help enhance your career as an IT professional.
What advice would I give to somebody who's thinking of joining BCS? I would say absolutely do it. It gives you an opportunity to have access to a massive amount of resource to fellow IT colleagues outside in other industries, other organisations. It also gives you a common point of conversation with your own internal IT colleagues as well. So I would say, yeah, absolutely go for it.
Okay, thanks Luke. So if we just pause then, having talked about BCS at the present, what do you think about these three? Do the three pillars that we talked about, so community excellence and leadership, do they miss out anything important? If you have to think of a fourth, would there be a fourth one that you'd suggest? The four campaigns that we talked about, so capability, education, personal data, health and care, is there a way that you can support one or more of those? And in general with our institute, what do you think is currently going well in particular, or what do you think is posing a challenge that we're not quite addressing properly just yet? Any thoughts just before we press on?
Well, I can say that posing a challenge, Ray, I really think that BCS has to push the premise that if you want to manage a large government project, you have to be professionally certified, say CITP. I really do not think the BCS is doing enough to actually push that forward. I think we've been very passive about it. We've been quite aggressive. And if we start off with the government, who spend a lot of money on IT, as you yourself know, who run very, very large projects, as you yourself know, we should actually be saying to the government, you've really got to consider this. You wouldn't think of having your accounts audited by someone who wasn't a qualified chartered accountant. You wouldn't think of having a doctor operate on you for heart surgery unless they were suitably qualified. And yet we don't actually push that for the BCS. And I think, I'm a member of council myself, and I keep saying to presidents as they come through, your job is to push this on behalf of the institute.
I think the pillar you're missing out is professionalism.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the external. What you haven't done is you've talked about IT good for society, but you actually haven't said IT, the BCS is actually good for its members. And I think this that you've almost flipped it on its head. You should be talking to the members about why they should be members of BCS. What is its advantages? What's the benefit? And I'm not talking about the fact that you can get Microsoft products at reduced cost and things like that. I'm talking about the fact is that as members, you can be kept up to date. You can get the new technology. You can actually be at the forefront. You might not necessarily have to do it yourself, but you have within the BCS the tools to be a professional. And my institute, I'm a chartered accountant environment, and my institute damn well sends out to its members every bloody week, just telling us just how good we are and how we must persuade people that there's a reason for using. The BCS doesn't do that. The BCS almost says, excuse me, we're here, we're in this little corner, we're here, we have all these wonderful people. Most people don't even know.
We're too self-effacing.
Yeah. You, for goodness sake, go proclaim the good things you do. Like those things. They're not, how many members have you even bothered to tell how good it is to be a member? we've got to now tell, you talk about having 700,000 certified analysts and all the rest. But most people out there have no idea. They'll take a Microsoft bloody certificate above a BCS one, thinking that the Microsoft one is better. I'm sorry, you don't sell yourselves well.
I think what we see is one thing is more about awareness, what we are talking about, and another thing is what I could see is like BCS has got a lot of knowledge base to offer, especially when it comes to IT, and where we have very rich knowledge available, and especially what I could see, like what we as a BCS community need to, when I say target like to pursue students membership, because students, they see, okay, £85, whatever, it doesn't give them a value. But if we able to start those routes from there as a student, pursue them to be a part of a BCS professional group, I think they will be our kind of a messengers to spread out what kind of good work we do. And I would say that would be one of the campaign, one of the aspects is to be we should be seriously focusing on. So when we see, we just have like 4 or 5 forums within UK. Now I myself, I'm a life member of CIS, and it's similar to BCS in India, so I'm the life member of there. And I could basically have a lot of interactions with CIS president and so on, sharing my experience with BCS there. And they're saying, okay, they're kind of targeting that audience, those students, especially in the universities, and they said that's where we would like to basically see, because we have a lot of knowledge to offer, we have a lot of professionals, we have a lot of kind of speakers, they would like to come and share their knowledge, but the missing section is the students where we basically need to know, because professionals will know, okay, it's okay, we have this certificate, I have a day job, I have so many things to do, but I think they will be a kind of a foundation, the messengers to spread out and absorb the framework, absorb the knowledge that we have, and take this further.
Good, thank you. Alan,
yeah, I've heard the word professionalism used 4 times now, and the big problem with professionalism, if you look at what are considered to be the professions at the moment, law, chartered accountancy, medicine, they all have societies that sanction their members, authorise their members. We are not a sanctioning society. We're not even an award, well, yes, we make awards, but they're internal to ourselves. We are not a recognised degree award society. So being a chartered accountant requires years of study. Becoming an ACA or an FCA requires further years of continuing professional education, and you can be struck off.
I can be struck off if I do not do a minimum number of hours for my profession.
And the
the BCS do have absolutely no requirement on their members to keep up with anything.
I believe if we're going to create full professionalism, we need to look beyond the fact that we have our Royal Charter to look to what that means for the medical profession, for example. Yeah. Their Royal Charters are very clear. Their members are qualified under their Royal Charter. They can be struck off for misdemeanours of a variety of sorts. Now, I don't see anyone within the BCS operating in a way that requires them to be struck off. But I can imagine circumstances where they might be.
And we do have a disciplinary procedure, of course, which is used on occasions. An interesting debate, again, perhaps for another evening, is of course, what is the IT profession? It's very difficult these days with so many people using sophisticated IT in a way that almost makes them programmers themselves to work out who is a professional programmer, for instance, and who is just a very sophisticated user.
I found it interesting you said this, that you actually have disciplinary procedures. My institute will bloody well plaster all over its newsletter whenever they have a disciplinary one where someone is being struck off for misconduct or other things like that. I've never heard in the BCS of anybody being even disciplined for misbehaviour.
You think the CIO of Tesco will be struck off?
I guess that depends on the nature of the problem.
If I can come back to a third item on your list there, what's currently going on or posing a challenge. something's going really well, I'm coming out of retirement. Here's the challenge. I'm of an age where actually getting in front of anybody to have my skill sets of 50 years, considered even, is a major undertaking.
And I have 40 years experience and I find exactly the same thing. We have so-called laws about ageism. I'm sorry, but every ad that you read, you can read the, in my case it's ideal roles for those moving from practice, first moves into industry. In other words, we want a 25-year-old, we don't want a 6-year-old. 6-year-olds need not bother applying. Oh, you'll get the interview because they have to, but you haven't the hope of bloody hell of ever getting the job.
I was excited when I went back to DWP. I realised that there was still some COBOL around when I was writing COBOL in the 70s, and I said, well, I want to see some COBOL code, please. I haven't seen any for decades. So they took me up to the northwest, and I was getting quite excited. I was thinking back to my youth. Do you remember that show, The IT Crowd?
Oh, yes.
I thought it was going to be like The IT Crowd, and I walked in, and there's a lot of old people doing COBOL code. And then I realised they were the same age as me. I'm old as well. And COBOL has become an old person's art in some respects.
Except 1/3 of all financial services programs are in COBOL.
If you look on YouTube, there's I think Micro Focus have put it's only about 3 or 4 minutes, and it's called World Without COBOL. And it's worth just Googling on YouTube, and it shows you just how much COBOL, as John says, is still around. It's amazing. Let's press on to the future. There's another quote I want to read you. This is from an organisation called Lenton Associates. This is thinking about what we need to do to change in the future to still be relevant. It says this: the rise of the individualistic culture and growth in working hours has resulted in a growing reluctance to volunteer or join a club. Many associations are suffering from declining engagement and shortage of volunteers, particularly young volunteers, for their governance structures. Then it says associations need to identify and focus on the 2 or 3 key reasons why people should join their association. Perhaps they need to declutter their proposition and the costs that go with it. Success in thinking these issues through is having a clearer picture of where your association needs to be in 5 or 10 years' time, and the ability to plan how you get there. So I've been showing that quote to people and trying to get a debate going about what BCS should look like in, say, 10 years' time as a 21st century professional institution, because as some of us have been hinting at. I joined the BCS in 1981. The reasons I joined it, I wanted to get an education, I wanted access to a library in those days, and I was able to use what's now the IET library down at Savoy Place. I wanted to come to events like this to network. Young people, of course, educate themselves in different ways to most of us. They network in different ways.
They YouTube.
They get their education in different ways. And they want it all for free. They don't like paying for things often. So a couple of years ago, when I first stood as deputy president, they asked you to put a nomination statement together, and it's a couple of pages, but I just picked out the sorts of things that I talked about. I talked about the need for us to have a long-term vision of what sort of organisation we'll need to be by the end of the decade. Because in my experience with BCS, we're quite good at taking the 3-year plan and rolling it forward another year. We're not as good at saying what would we need to look like by the end of by 2020 or by 2025, and what does a professional body look like in the 21st century, and how is it different from 1981 when I joined. Point that we made earlier, more when it comes to influencing, lobbying and sharing opinions, explaining and commenting robustly on matters which affect our profession. So someone from BCS ought to be on Newsnight when there's a problem with Tesco's or car emissions or something there, or on the Radio 4 Today programme. Further ways of promoting our profession and its standards, attracting more young people in, extending the reach of our institute into the digital world of new IT, making our profession more diverse, inclusive and open to all. So that's the questions I've been asking people on this, interested in your thoughts. What would be the 2 or 3 key reasons why someone should join BCS today, as opposed perhaps to when some of us joined, in some cases decades ago? What should we look like in 5 or 10 years' time? We'll come to the theme for my presidential year in a minute. You asked to pick one. Mine is about IT project management and making it a happier experience. But what would be the theme? What would you focus on for your year? Would be relevant. Any thoughts?
Probably the most basic of all, proper controls. Then I'm an auditor.
Yeah.
And for me, the main issues within IT have not changed. The boxes that they're in have changed. In fact, if anything, things have got messier. since the time we had the mainframe and rigid controls, a lack of understanding of the risks associated, particularly with access controls. We're still going to be looking at that in 5 to 10 years. Everybody thinks the cloud is going to be the salvation. Mind you, they also thought the Unix box was going to be the salvation. Maybe I'm aging myself a little bit there. I think that actually it's the basics. The basic controls, the underlying risks associated with getting them wrong have not changed. But the attention to details on the underlying controls are no longer there. There's an assumption that because something works at the moment, if we change it, it'll still work. Rather than saying, why does it work at the moment, and how do we ensure when we change it that it continues to work?
Good.
And I think that's what's good. That's actually what we're going to be looking at in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've just sat through 2 days of Tom Gill talking next door, and the one thing that he reminded me of is that 40% of all the projects we're involved in, either as professional members of the BCS or outside of the BCS, are total failures. And a further 50%, that's 90% in all, are largely failures. Now, that cannot hold us in anything other than contempt is probably too strong, but it's not a word that you should dismiss entirely.
That's a great link to my next section, my last section, which is a quick canter through my theme and what I've been talking to members about, which is exactly that subject, Alan, driving up the success rate of IT projects. So there's the challenge. For decades, we've been bombarded with books and reports and metrics on what IT project failure. I won't go through them all there, but you'll recognise some of those. Gartner, 75% of IT projects fail. 70% of organisations, one major project failure in the last year. Number of projects cancelled before they were complete, and wasted. Look at the titles of those bottom 2, common causes of IT failure and their remedies, lessons from a decade of project failure. And yet we're still not in a good place, even after decades of these reports and thinking about the problem. And the funny thing is, we know so much about why IT projects fail, and yet they still fail.
Mythical ones.
Yeah, mythical man-month, that's right.
Well, I think it's that sometimes projects fail because people actually don't understand what the hell the project's trying to do in the first place.
I'll give you I'll try and remember a nice clip about that in a minute. So here's the cause that I've been promoting, driving up the success of IT projects with a positive focus on what we know to be the critical factors, because we do know so much about what we have to do.
Oh, yeah.
So the aim, making project failure a choice, as in if you did what we know is right, projects wouldn't fail. You've almost got to choose to ignore the good advice that we know. So it's a strange way of putting it, but making project failure a choice, not an accepted inevitability, because it doesn't need to be that. Is it impossible? Well, maybe, but we won't know until whether we can do it until we do it. And the means, adopting proven principles, fresh mindsets, and taking actions which we know work, and there is so much available about that. And sometimes it's to do with how we define project success. So the London Eye, I think, is a good example. Most people would say the London Eye was a very successful project. You know, it's an iconic landmark. People are queuing up to go on it every day. It was only meant to last 5 years. I think it's going to plan 25 years now. Most people would say, what a great project, what a fantastic thing. Do you remember though, in 1999, all the issues they had with the London Eye? You know, they got it halfway up and they had to abandon the first attempt to get it upright. It was due to open on the Millennium Eve.
Didn't.
It was formally opened by the Prime Minister on Millennium Night, but no one could go on it and ride it until about 3 months later because it had this capsule clutch failure. So it was a project that had an immovable end date and it missed it by 3 months. So was that a project failure? Or was it actually, looking back, a very successful project? So maybe we need to think about how we define project success and failure. And maybe it isn't always about time and budget and scope. Maybe it's to do with other things.
And sometimes it's to do with where you're starting from.
Yeah.
That's a popular case study in a lot of the business study books.
Is it?
Corporate strategy.
Yeah. So the quote I was trying to remember, look out for the next edition of IT Now, which they let you guest edit when you're the president. So in the same way that there's something around the 4 challenges and the one I referred to earlier, we've got a few articles on IT project management. And David Reynolds, who's the head of our Comms G, the project management specialist in this group, he's got a nice expression there. He talks about project managers being asked, I should see if I can get this right from memory, it's about doing something that no one fully understands without enough resources and to a time scale that's been made up and is really tough to achieve. So these are the action areas that I've been promoted. It is my theme for my year as president, bringing together experts, leaders and practitioners to help us. We've got some writing articles in that magazine that's coming out soon, focusing on what we know to be the critical factors, so the right people, leadership, behaviours and choices. Usually it's not to do with a technological failure, it's to do with a human failure. It's a lack of leadership or even something like communication or emotional intelligence. So why don't we expand our Sophia Plus framework to include more of that, stop people going away on Prince 2 courses and coming back and thinking they're qualified to run a project, when actually those are the things that they need to go along with those methodologies. As I say, measuring project success in meaningful terms, ensuring that IT is an integral part of and driving the business, and delivering and publicising case studies and examples and so on. And that's what I've been trying to promote this year. So, questions there I've been asking people, what's your definition of a successful IT project? Is it necessarily to time and to budget to scope, or might it be something different? What still stops us from achieving this every time? And obviously a question for this group in particular, how and to what extent do IT project managers underestimate the importance of information risk management and performance in their projects? Any quick thoughts?
I would say in terms of project failure, is more what I see is more about time now, because projects or the project manager or the PM, there's so much delivery focus, so the compromise always on the quality, and quality work is more about, okay, need to be delivered in the given time frame, and that's it. So if they knew the failures are there are going to be issues, okay, we will solve it on the back of the project delivery. So I think
I think an IT project is successful when actually there is a very, very clear definition as to what they're trying to achieve. When the scope, and I don't mean the full scope, I mean the definitive line is exactly what this project is about. When that is clearly defined and understood by everybody, you have a bloody good chance of success. When it is wishy-washy, like payroll transformation, I love that word, it means shit all. And any project going with that kind of title has almost no hope of succeeding. However, if you have something like maybe master data implementation, everybody understands the components of it, and people can come on board with it. But when you've got so-called wonderful words like transformation and these kind of things, they can be so woolly that nobody actually will ever clearly put borders on it. And when something doesn't have a border, it has no hope of succeeding.
The scope creeps, that doesn't help as well.
I think one of the most important part is whether the IT project align with business. Because we're not doing IT project for the sake of IT project.
Yeah.
We're doing IT project to see what value added to the businesses.
Some people say, of course, there are no such thing as IT projects these days. There are business change projects which involve technology, because that's how we do business.
Does it meet IT user needs?
That's about business, what business expects from IT project, not what IT project expect to deliver in terms of IT as a project.
I'm being told it's past 8 o'clock,
yeah,
so
either
people are worried about my train and they want me to stop in a minute, so I'll stop in again.
Can I say there are two, I'll give you an answer to the first two questions. Definition of a successful IT project is the one I was running. The one that stops everyone from achieving this is I'm not hired often enough.
All right. So that's it in my presentation. Just remains for me to say thank you all for being so active members of BCS and in this particular room. You're the engine room of our institute, people like you who come to these events and make these things happen. Really good to be with you tonight. I will shoot off in a minute and make sure I don't miss the last train, or I should be in trouble with the day job. But if it works, there's one last video just to show you before we finish.
being a part of that change initially is good because you get to formulate your own role within the team.
I like things to be sleek, I like them to be quick, so I make sure that that's how we work now.
I've been helping upgrade PCs to Windows 10 and laptops as well. I've learned loads. I've learned more than I know what to do with sometimes.
When I first came on board with BCS, it was to build the Student Chapters initiative. And since then, we've built up to 28 student chapters.
BCS offers a lot of challenges. What I like is the ability to solve some of those problems.
I think the great thing about being part of BCS at the moment is the challenges. I mean, the whole idea is making IT good for society, so I think it's going to be really interesting and eventually begin to influence government.
Well, I've been responsible for initiating one of our largest engagements with a government client. And maintaining a really strong relationship to the point where they're promoting us within wider government circles.
I hope I've brought a new passion and drive to a new product team which is really concentrating on the customer.
I think if I feel proud of anything, it's actually working with the apprenticeship team. This has been a brand new initiative. We brought together government, training providers, employers, educators, all under one roof.
I've managed to make contact with MPs, ministers, lords in order to set up appointments for my colleagues.
I'm proud of the sheer volumes that we've had to handle, the amount of work we've been getting day to day and getting it done.
Well, we call it ourselves an A team, what we like to. We've only just come together in the last 2-3 months, and it's nice to be learning and buzzing off each other.
It has been a team effort, which has probably been great to see.
I think that we have increased our strategic partnerships with the likes of IIBA, Axelos and Exit, which will further our product portfolio.
One of the things our team has done recently is to change the messaging to our Labs members, and we found that by doing that, 50% of them have returned.
The IT department's grown, the development team has grown, and we're delivering more in our day-to-day. We're making achievements all the time.
So within my team, the support team, we've done a lot of work on trying to save money.
Our department's biggest contribution recently has been the expansion of staff.
We've had to rejig all the departments and move everyone around to make room, and it's gone really well.
I say sort of we contribute as a team, and I think it's very much in response to what our universities are requesting from us.
I'm really proud of the fact that we've recruited around 350 master teachers that are going out training teachers within their local community.
In the last 12 months, we've achieved really massive growth within our school market. We are offering our qualifications to over 176,000 students, which is fantastic news.
BCS is a company which allows you to express yourself, be an individual and move forward.
I've only been here a month and I already love it here. You know, the people here are brilliant. Really, really nice company to work for.
People are recognising us much more as a company.
What I find exciting looking forward is being part of an organisation that's changing.
I would like to see even more collaborative working between both sides of the business.
One of the things that I'm really excited about for the future is that we're going to be getting more and more of our members and members of society together with BCS Voices. And have discussion and debate around their challenge topics.
We would like to move internationally across the whole world, offer our user qualifications to students, but also our higher level qualifications to adults.
This is a really fresh idea. I think there's never been anything like the direction of making IT good for society.
So BCS can inform and educate and make IT interesting. I find it exciting that the children that are being educated now will be doing jobs that don't even exist at the moment, and it's really good to be part of that.
I would like BCS moving forward into the future to be at the heart of every community, to actually be changing people's lives, to be a voice, to be a directive and to be an influencer.
Okay, thanks very much everybody. Apologies, I do have to shoot off in a minute, but really nice to be with you this evening, and special thanks to Luke for staying and helping me with the videos. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, that's sensible.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, that's the
That's
sorry,
just
I
so
can't
the
stop,
sandwich,
but-
but
And wine.
And wine. I know how busy your year is. And you're only halfway through it, wow. Thank you, Reza. Oh yeah, I said to Brian, I said, please help yourself with sandwich, and thank you very much for attending our AGM. Hope to see you for... Thank you. Thanks a lot. See you. Yeah, sure. John,